Welcome to the High Impact Man podcast. High impact men from across the nation sharing their stories of inspiration, encouragement, and hope.
Gosh, seek transformational relationships.
That what you're hearing from the culture is not right. Pick up the six, you know what I mean? But you never know who your six sometimes is.
Stop being less.
To help others become the virtuous leaders they're called to be and that our nation desperately needs.
All right, welcome to another episode of the High Impact Man podcast. This is Nevin Gorky. I'm known as Defib to all y'all out there in F3 gloom, and I'm joined as always by Troy Klinger. He's known as Dial-Up to the F3 guys, and Dial-Up. We've had every guest, every guy that hosts podcasts for F3 Nation on our podcast, but one.
Yeah. Won't be able to say that anymore at the end of the night.
Our guest today, Jamie Roseborough, known as Repeato, the co-host with Hello Kitty and the COT podcast. Repeato, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Glad I could, bat cleanup or caboose or whatever we're doing here. I didn't know I was the lone holdout, so this is exciting. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invite.
And the hair looks good. I mean, it's like dark. It is dark helmet quality.
Well, I just came out of a Movember and no shave, and I had actually let my hair grow pretty long as well. My wife was like, "It's got to go." So it got a little short on the sides, but no, we're good. It's 8:00 East Coast time as we're recording here, and so got the family hopefully all squared away. We'll see if we have any 3-year-old interruptions for one last hug before she takes off for the evening. But no, it's good to be here, man. I'm excited to talk through all the things you guys want to touch on and reach the men of the gloom here through the airways and all those good things.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you coming to us from? Where do you live?
I live in Cary, North Carolina, right outside of Raleigh. It's central North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina. Born in Greensboro, but early on moved to Western North Carolina into the mountains where most of my extended family was from. My parents were originally from Asheville, so I grew up in Asheville. I'm a mountain boy through and through. Went to college at App State for undergrad and grad school, Appalachian State and Boone. So always a mountain man. Beach is fine, but where we live now is 2 hours to the coast and 3 hours to the mountains, so it couldn't be better.
Yeah, right in the middle there. Yeah. I read in your bio that you went to App State. They just fired their football coach, I think, right?
Yeah.
The Mounties.
Yeah, we have a high expectation here in an unknown college landscape land. I don't think I would want to be a coach at a prominent, well-known, rabid fan base group of 5 school where success now doesn't look like what success probably looked like just a few years ago, and what it's going to look like in a couple of years. I think it's got to be a tremendously difficult challenge to coach a team, be a leader, develop, boys into men beyond just X's and O's on a whiteboard, right? There's a lot of moving parts that I think a head coach in D1 athletics particularly, but maybe the entire coaching world, I mean, people will write books about it, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I mean, there's always pressure to win, no matter what level you're at. But when you're on a higher level and there's a lot of money involved and alumni that are supercharged, then your job is a little bit more at risk. You got a D3 football coach who maybe is just really doing a great job with the boys. Maybe a little less risk to lose his job, but I don't know. But you're right, man. The impact that they can have is significant beyond the football field and the wins and losses.
Ever since that number one team knockoff quite a few years ago now, right? The expectations.
Yeah,
like they beat another
Michigan?
level.
Was that who they beat?
Michigan, yeah.
Right.
All
that was 2007.
That's a long
September
time.
1st, 2007. You can't see it on my wall here, but I've got a copy of the Sports Illustrated framed from that that fateful day.
Yeah,
it was a program-defining moment, right? And that's sort of
put you on the map.
A seminal moment in the school's history and the program's history that set the trajectory for the next 20 years, right? And the coaching search is interesting, and how external forces are going to change a program's foundational pieces. Where the coach at the time during the Michigan win, Jerry Moore, he had been there for 30 years, and sort of like if you think about how famous coaches in the NFL all got their start under, Parsons and Belichick, and now
Right.
that sort of family tree of coaches is darted all over the college landscape as well as the pros. Appalachian has had a very significant focus on culture and hiring within and sort of the developmental process. And one hire came out, we had Drinkwitz, who actually is F3 aspartame. I don't know if you know that, who the coach is at Missouri.
No.
When he was offensive coordinator at NC State, he posted with us and the F3 Raleigh guys. He's aspartame because he drinks 12 Diet Mountain Dews a day. But the last couple of hires have been within sort of the family, right? The culture. And so these outside forces of what you're seeing with the money, the playoff, the what have you done for me lately, the athletic directors who are now more or less CEOs of billion-dollar businesses and NIL deals, and all of these forces are very much impacting the central core of a program. And how, again, like we're just talking about, you're trying to lead 18 to 25-year-olds to victory and to development and growth and spiritual growth and responsibility. But then you've got all these other people you're beholden to. I don't know if it's a good job to have. It's prestigious. These guys are type A that want to win and are good at it for a long time for a number of reasons. But I think there's a lot of interesting personal and professional lessons to be learned with just looking at football coaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, and App State, Dial-Up and I, well, he did it a couple more years than I did, but 2 years I did the Blue Ridge Relay. We ate lunch at Boone 2 years ago.
Okay.
In Boone, I should say, and that was a bunch of guys limping into the whatever the name of the restaurant we were at. It was like a sports bar type restaurant.
It was an Irish name or something like that. O'Malley's, or I can't remember what it was. I just remember you guys were all cramping up. I'm like,
oh my gosh, the three of us.
I'm like, this is not going to be good.
Was
we
it
had three guys
on King Street in Boone?
I think that's what it was.
We had three of us in the aisle stretching out we were cramping up. So that was interesting.
Yeah, we've done the Blue Ridge. It's a big thing here, obviously, because it's quote unquote local. Posted a lot with the F3 Boone guys over the years because we go back to that area all the time to Blowing Rock, which is the next town over from Boone.
I love Blowing Rock.
Yeah, and so years past we've had 7 or 8 teams, 6-man, 9-man, 12-man, all from just Carpex, or now Carpex Green Level, South Cary, Apex is Peak City when we've started starfishing our own region quite significantly over the last 3 years. It's a big deal. Everybody loves it. Everybody puts that, a second weekend in September, first weekend, whatever it is. That goes on the
weekend
calendar
after Labor Day,
January, typically. But yeah, I'm glad you guys are familiar with my favorite places and stomping grounds. I've got helmets and Yosef Santas behind me, darting my little nook here in the bonus room where I work all day. But yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was we drove. The relay goes through Blowing Rock all the time, and man, I thought that was the coolest place because the other year I did it, we ate lunch in Blowing Rock, and that was pretty cool.
Have you ever run Lake 13?
No, that's the Lake Spielberg ran.
I ran it this past year, right? That's the one that finishes in Blowing Rock, right?
Yeah, so that you start typically at the church, and then you get on the parkway for a little while, and then you come down a hill.
Yep, steep downhill, yeah.
Yeah, so when you turn left off of the Blue Ridge Parkway to go down Green Hill Road, and when that bottoms out at that hill, and you take a right onto Wonderland Trail, and you weave through, and you kind of go around the golf course, and you go down, and you get all the way down Sunset and back up to the pool.
Yep.
When you take that right, coming down Green Hill, on the left, there's a brown house, and my wife's 97-year-old grandparents live in that brown house. And then there's a field and a big old barn and our garden and some woods and a creek, and my wife's parents live there. And so so that's our little homestead. So when we're up there, that's where we're at all the time. So all the guys here locally or people I talk to that run BRR, when that Lake 13 is that route, because it's changed sometimes when COVID year, or there was another year where they couldn't get a permit for the parkway or something like that. You run right by the house. So cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
very neat.
I ran it this year. My only complaint is they're not directing traffic down to the red light. I did not time the light right, so I had to stop at the traffic light. Wait for
across the big 5-lane right there?
Across the highway there.
No, that's no good.
Right as you got down into Blowing Rock.
That's brutal. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, this is the part of the show where Dial-Up and I play Guess How Our F3 Guest Got His Name. And Dial-Up, I'm going to let you go first because I have no idea.
Yeah. The only thing I had is I know he's got some IT background, and I believe there's like some type of like software out there. I think it's like some type of like automated testing thing that I've heard of, because I think we looked at it as an organization a couple years ago named Rapido. I think it's newer than that, so I'm thinking that it's probably not related, but I'm gonna go with that. His IT background, testing, somehow they came up, someone knew about this Repeato software, and that's all I got.
I'm going to say, first time you posted, you kept repeating yourself, because I have no idea.
Those are both good guesses. And I know I don't know if it's pen testing or what the testing is, but I know I've seen that logo because a lot of guys who have names and like in Slack will go find something that's representative of their name out on the Google machine to put as their like emoji or their profile picture or whatever. And when I've looked for Rapido in years past, there's nothing out there but that one software company. But no, it's neither one of those. My story started back in probably 2016. We moved down here to this area, had lived in Washington, D.C., the greater Beltway area, for about 7.5 years before we came down here in 2016. And a neighbor of mine, F3 Sputnik, Brent Hubble, call him Sputnik for Hubble Space Telescope. He had started working on me that summer at the pool, that first summer, and I brushed him aside and sort of, Heisman'd him for a while. And then I think it was it might have been the Craig Melvin interview that went to Charlotte and posted with Dredd and the guys. I don't know if you remember that. It was empty. It was a Today Show, one of the first Today Show hits that I think F3 had ever had. And that got me back interested to reach out to Brent in May of 2017. And so went and posted first. It was a Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. And shut in. I don't know if you know Carpex's shut in, Matt Kelly. During COT, they were, doing the standard, like, where are you from? What are you about? Wife, kids, job, concert, hobbies, all that kind of stuff. And I got to talking about app, and I had told him all about like background in the federal space and contracting and civilian work and intelligence work and all that kind of stuff. And none of that stuck out. And then most of the guys here are all like state grads or Carolina grads or, schools here in North Carolina. And I said something about, I didn't want to leave Boone, which was true. Like when I graduated undergrad, I didn't want to leave Boone. I didn't want to get a real job. So I went into grad school, got another 2 years in Boone. And somehow that morphed into like I repeated a grade or like I was held back or something.
Sounds like
that.
A classic Namorama.
Right.
And so I think that's the way it goes. That's sort of what most people I think agree to who were there that morning. There was, for a while I thought it was like, well, I grew up in North Carolina, went to school in North Carolina, I left and I came back. But no, I think it was the fact that I did 2 degrees at App. It was Rapido.
All right. So. Yeah, I would have never got that.
No, nobody would. It's not that cool, honestly. It's not, because I'm a big, when I do a name, if I'm lucky enough to be Q for an F&G, I love like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon F3 names.
Yeah.
What people are throwing out and what that F&G is talking about and how like it's just there's no logical path, but unless you can like talk to that man and hear his story and get to know him a little bit with how he's telling you how he got his name, that opens the door for other avenues of conversation. So yeah, it's not that fun. It's not that cool, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. And
it is
now you're well known as Rapido. So
I don't know if there are others. Have you heard of other Rapidos in F3?
I have not. I have not.
Have you ever looked on? Do you do the Iron Packs challenge every year? Did you ever look through the list to see if?
I have done the PAX challenge. I have done the official register it put times, but it's been a couple of years since I've done that. I've never looked at the list. I think I'm the only Rapido on the nation Slack, which I guess would be one of the bigger repositories to crosswalk. But
agreed. Yeah, well, you're an intelligence officer. You should be able to find these things.
I do have the ability to swim upstream against the open networks, but that's fine.
All right. Well, speaking of which, that's your kind of F3 origin story. Why don't you tell us? I know you grew up in Carolina, but tell us what life was like growing up, and take it from there, man.
Yeah, grew up like I said. I had an older sibling still. She's kicking, but she's 7 years older than I am. So we spent the first smaller part of like my childhood and adolescence together, and then she went off to college. She's an app grad too. then moved down here to Raleigh. So when I went into like 5th or 6th grade, when she left high school to go to college, it was almost like I was an only child for a while. But it was good. I was surrounded by, quintessential, parents, 2 kids, dog, all the things. Growing up playing sports, I was sports obsessed. Basketball, baseball, football, basically on that rotation. At one point I was really like baseball obsessed and was playing almost year round, ball, fall ball, summer ball, spring ball, etc. And we moved to Asheville, like I said, living up there. We had lots of extended family on both my parents' side. They grew up there, went to high school there. So we had, both sets of grandparents, lots of cousins, aunts and uncles. So grew up in a very big family with a lot of intentional gatherings around birthdays and holidays. So it was really cool. At one point we were living like through the woods from my aunts and uncles and 2 cousins. So it was really, really awesome. Really loved growing up in the mountains, loved being outside, loved the outdoors. Spent a lot of time with my grandfather, a number of years. He's over my shoulder. You can't see him in this screenshot, but I've got a picture of him on a motorcycle in Italy. He was a bomber in a B-26, bombing the hell out of North Africa in World War II. He was a cool dude. Learned a lot from him in life, from everything from gardening to small engine repair to how to treat a woman, like all those kind of things you read about. It was really storybook. And so, grew up thinking about a career in service of some kind, whether that was going to be military or law enforcement or something in that world. I wasn't 100% sure, but I knew I sort of had a focus towards that. Ended up going to App because they were at the time one of the few schools in North Carolina. I wasn't going out of state. One of the few schools in North Carolina that had a criminal justice program. Charlotte was one, Wilmington was one. But my sister had gone to App. We had other extended family up there that I've been going up there all the time. I was like, I'm not leaving the mountains. So went up there, had a beautiful, wonderful time in college up there. It's a great place to go to school. So much to do, so much to learn. Great to be a part of. Had a really cool criminal justice program, good faculty, and the grad school program I mentioned earlier was brand new when I enlisted. When I applied. Right, I didn't have to learn new faculty. I didn't have to learn new professors. I was sort of part of that first cohort, and they were trying to figure it out. We were trying to figure it out. So it was a little bit easier probably than a typical master's program. But at that point, started applying to different federal agencies, doing internships, just trying to think, okay, I probably need to make my way towards DC, the sort of the belly button of all things I was interested in at the time. And I had actually begun the process to become a Secret Service agent, and was going through that process, which is lots of series of interviews. They make you take a pretty robust, at the time, I don't know what it's called now. At the time it was called the TEA, Treasury Enforcement Agent Exam. And then you got to go through another rounds of interviews. And I was graduating in 2008, and I was going through that process in 2007, and Obama got the nomination to be the DNC candidate, right? And then when won the election, the Secret Service was like, put a halt on all new hires because the threat level against him and the family had gone through the roof, and they were pulling in all resources from all across the agency to do inauguration work, to do transition work, to do, all the things that they do. And it was at that time where the Secret Service was like, we want to keep pursuing this, but you're not going to get into a training class for at least like 6 to 12 months. And I'm thinking, well, I'm about to graduate. I got to figure out what's going to happen next. And about that time, an application I had submitted to the Bureau, somebody finally saw it and called and started that process. So the horse race was on between who was going to offer me a job and send me to training first, and it ended up being the Bureau. So went to Quantico in 2009. Yeah, started Quantico September 11th, 2009. Went through that training, got detailed to DC. At that time, I had been dating my now wife for about 3 or so years. We had met while I was in grad school. She was an app grad, but met through a mutual mentor of ours. And so pulled her up to DC, got engaged, and was living that Bureau lifestyle for 5 years or so, and had our first kid, and started needing more space and square footage, and stretching our dollars further. And so we moved out to Virginia and then moved out further into Virginia and further. And so at one point, it was just like we had had enough of the rat race of the Beltway. Had done some really cool things in my time with the Bureau, from
So
counterterrorism
what were you
side
doing?
of stuff. Yeah, I was doing counterterrorism casework, analysis, assessments. At one point, me and my team were writing overnight intel reports that were going into Director Mueller's briefing book and making their way to the President's Daily Briefing book, the PDB. So I was involved in some really cool stuff, seeing really how government works and doesn't work, and how the sausage is made, and understanding how the world really sort of works in its unusual, cohesive way, with enemies and friends and frenemies and interesting bedfellows, all of those things. So my itch was getting scratched where I thought, I wanted to end up from the the life dream of being in federal law enforcement or in the intelligence community. But it was like, it wasn't meeting the need of like what we were wanting with raising kids around a unique set of friends that were all still basically in the North Carolina area from college and from childhood, but also all of our family was down here, not close to DC whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so we made the strategic effort to say, you know what, let's get back to North Carolina. And at that time I had moved out of the federal service as a civilian and was a contractor. And I was traveling a lot globally. I needed an airport. I didn't need an office. And so my wife actually got a job offer to bring us to Raleigh. It was really probably going to be Charlotte or Raleigh, depending on where we landed on our feet. And thankfully it was Raleigh, and have been down here ever since. And so I've bounced around between a few different roles, all with sort of a continuous touch to the federal space. Some of it's been directly in technology for military applications, data challenges for the intelligence community. And now I work for Generac Power Systems. Most people know the name Generac from being a home standby product line. They're great. You should buy one if you haven't. Also, we've got a good stock going. So,
Well, they make home generators. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Home standby portable generators. But I work on the clean side of the business now, managing our Department of Energy products, our contracts, using some of our products on the clean space, like batteries and inverters and some other things.
Now, when you were working for the Bureau, or even afterward, did you catch any terrorists?
Well, no. I was not a resting power type guy. I was trying to put together many disparate pieces of information to see a bigger picture. So you get a piece of information from something or somewhere, and work to figure out what that means. Is it true? How do you turn a piece of information into a piece of intelligence, something that's actionable, or something that puts in a missing piece to something else you're working on? How do you discern, droplets of information from a fire hose of continuous, things available to you through many different means, both from the open source world all the way to the classified space. And so that's really what I was doing. The people in that world really do work against a set of requirements that Congress and committees on the Hill put together, and the threat assessments, and what are areas of interest, what are countries of interest, or what are active threats against the United States and its interests, both here domestically and globally. And so there's lots of people charged with trying to figure that out on a day-to-day basis, and was one of those cogs in that wheel.
On a more lighthearted topic, working for Generac, is it part of your playbook that anybody that gets a backup system installed at their house, are they all set to run their little kind of test script at the same time on the same day of the week? Because like our neighbors all fire up at the exact same time on the same day of the week. Is that like standard?
That's a good question. That's probably programmed into the software, like Wednesdays at 2:00 or something like that. My parents have a whole home standby. It's not a Generac. They got it before I started working there.
Yeah.
But there's like clockwork runs like you're saying, just to cycle through and make sure everything's working, and trip any code or anything like that if there's an issue that needs to be addressed. But yeah, that's funny. If you've got multiple people in your neighborhood, if like some salesman had a good day, or you live in an area that gets hit by a storm, sales goes through the roof when one person gets an install, or if the right kind of electrician or company can come through. It's like you see signs in yards after a hailstorm, everybody gets a new roof, right? So, same principles apply. That's fun.
Yeah, they descend on you. We had a hailstorm probably 9 years ago, something like that.
Probably,
10 years ago.
Yeah.
We had this. We don't get these kind of things that often, but it just destroyed automobiles and roofs and stuff like that. And out of the blue, by the next day, these people from all multiple states away are knocking on your door. Hey, you want us to replace your roof? Hey, you want us to replace your siding? And
it's crazy. Storm chasers.
Yeah,
right.
Chasers. But they, our roof had to be replaced, so we did that, and some siding got hit. But they're like, hey, we could submit this and that and this and that to the insurance, and like, no, that wasn't damaged. You don't have to do that. There's some shady stuff going on there. But anyway, we got a new roof out of the deal. But
that's crazy.
They descend
a lot of
like
people will,
hornets.
Try to be like, your roof got dinged in your car or something on a trip, and try to triangulate with the insurance company about, well, all this other stuff happened because of that as well. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
it's crazy. Dial-Up, do you have a generator?
We do not, but like I hear those fire up, like I said, the same day, same time. We've debated on doing it, but just haven't pulled the trigger yet.
I mean, it really
I've never
is.
had one. I don't know.
It really is like, you got to think about it as like a home improvement project, right? They're not cheap,
right?
Depending on your house size and the one that will fit what you're looking to fit, whether you want a whole home backup or partial, like
just keep your freezer running, right?
Yeah, you want to do like 5 or 6 outlets or this side of the house or something like that, or maybe it's 2.5 ton AC unit or whatever. You're not going to probably get out the door, depending on where you are in the country, for less than 12 to 15 grand. Right. And so it's really an investment and looked at as a home improvement project. There's some pretty good financing. I'm really selling it at the moment, but there's pretty good options out there. But you see what people went through with, what was it, Burl in Houston this year, and obviously the hurricanes and close to where I am and near and dear to where we are with Helene in Western North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. You start to think like, if I'm going to be here permanently and you see these things happening seemingly more frequently, you probably may really do want to figure out how to like financially make it work because of just the peace of mind alone, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. How'd your family make it through the storm? I know they live in Asheville and, in that whole area there.
Quite well. So where we were talking about on the BRR, coming down that leg, that side of the mountain, a lot of rain and a lot of wind, but not bad wind like you had just take out whole mountainsides of trees,
just laid them all down.
And my in-laws a few years ago had done a pretty significant like water redirection project with massive ditches dug and some big 3-foot size corrugated pipe French drain style things to try to move water, because you guys know up there in the mountains, just you get a significant thunderstorm, like a July afternoon, you can have ankle deep water running down the road pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so where their house sits sort of in this little hole down in the valley there as you run down the hill, and the water coming off the field and the road and then the mountain on the other side, they did the project. And I think that really saved them, honestly, from the amount of rain that area received in the 2 days ahead of the actual Helene storm, where the ground was just obliterated and saturated. There wasn't any place for it to go, and everybody's seen the footage of like every single stream and creek turned into like a raging class 5 rapid and worse. And so the family in Blowing Rock fared well. I've got one of my best friends from college lives over in Banner Elk, and he has a generator. He has a Generac, his house does, and it ran for 4 weeks before they got power back. And the town of Banner Elk just got like water back 2 to 3 weeks ago because they lost all infrastructure for their water pipes and their treatment plant. And so down in Asheville with my extended family down there, that still remains. Most everybody fared really well, considering I have a cousin, his wife had a small boutique store in Biltmore Village, and it's totally gone.
Yeah.
But other than that, friends from high school that I've reconnected with and seen on Facebook and others, most people, just lots of trees down, lots of isolation because of how many bridges and roads and everything that just got washed out. But some of the hardest hit areas around the Asheville area, like Swannanoa, Black Mountain, up towards over Spruce Pine, where like my family history is in Mitchell County. I mean, just absolutely decimated. Burnsville on the BRR, where you get a potato at the fire station, like that whole area just got obliterated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we always rent a cabin in Burnsville, and I know the road up to the cabin we stayed at this year was just gone.
Yeah,
and
it's wild.
Yeah, and I've said, like, I was absolutely blown away. I probably said it on an earlier podcast. Like, I was blown away that I think from doing the BRR, and also my dad hiked the AT a few years ago. I kind of have a lot of social media groups that I follow just because of those two different things, and like I was seeing so much devastation, and I was like, wow, like this is really, really bad. But like there wasn't anything on like the major news networks for like several days.
Yeah.
That were matching the demonstration of how bad things were down there. And I kept saying to my wife, I'm like, man, like things are really, really bad down there.
Yeah.
And then eventually, it started getting to the news, but it's sad, and I know the BRR folks say that like they're going to have the race next year, but I almost feel guilty in some ways. Like,
well, I know,
do I really want to go run a race through this area that's still probably going to be recovering at that point from so much devastation? But yet at the same time, you bring business to those groups. So it's
right. Yeah. I mean, that whole area lost their entire, some businesses lost their entire like yearly income because it's so rooted in fall leaves and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of our big high impact men here in Carpex, Banjo, Tom Hayes, he's actually heading
we
out.
know Banjo.
We know Banjo well, yeah.
So he's heading out west this weekend. He was on the DIY Bro channel on Slack looking for like chop saws and laser levelers and like other tools because he's going out and working with the BRR race director and helping rebuild some of the volunteer homes. And so I think they're trying to be all systems go for the race next year, and hopefully it could be one of the biggest and best ones ever to continue to and take on a charitable arm to help those most directly impacted, those on the route, those who volunteer their time, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think too, thinking through it as well, it's like a real life example of how prepared are you as a dad? How prepared are you as a husband? How prepared are you as a community member should something as impactful and significant and with such a long recovery trail, we're talking years for lots of places in the state. How prepared are you in the moment mentally, physically, and emotionally to get through it yourself and lead your family through it? I think there's a lot of good discussions in shield locks and COTs about, there's the gas station ready thing we've talked about a lot and people are familiar with and things of those scenarios, but like something like a storm of this magnitude or, from my background and everybody's watching the news, like what if the power goes out for months on end or basic utilities and services cease to exist, or you're 12 miles from your house and 15 miles from your kids in the middle of a Wednesday and all the traffic lights stop working. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So,
I'm going over to Dial-Up's house. He's got a pool.
Yeah, you got to fend for yourself, right? And it also just shows the importance of your local government and community leaders,
right?
And the difference that having high quality leaders within your community and local government, is really what makes a difference in this situation. We can't rely on the federal government or even the state government, right?
No.
Like you gotta rely on your local leadership.
There's so much bureaucracy; it'd take them forever to respond.
Right, exactly.
I think.
I mean, you're seeing the nightmare stories and scenarios of what FEMA is and isn't doing out west, and I mean,
and
boots on the ground.
Do you know Tigger from Fort Mill?
I don't know that I do.
I can't remember his first real name, but he started the organization CRI, Crisis Recovery
International Response International.
Anyway,
that's the guy that leads the training thing up in Virginia at the camp.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we had him on our podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We had him on our podcast, and he was in Asheville, so they responded there. But he didn't say anything bad about FEMA. He said they do what they're designed to do. You have to rely on a more local response to get it quickly and to know where it needs to go. That kind of thing. But he. In fact, I just texted him 2 days ago to ask him how things were going. He gave me some statistics, how many truckloads of water and everything else they delivered to Asheville and stuff like that. So, but anyway,
It's
that's what he
crazy to
said
see
about it.
the regression to like primitive stuff, like the first
Right.
boots on the ground where even like side by sides and ATVs couldn't get to. It was horseback and like mules.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
Greg Biffle, the NASCAR driver, was a good follow on social media.
He was. I followed Greg. Yeah.
Yeah, using his helicopter and guys all over the Charlotte metro area. Lots of guys with birds making runs up the mountain. It's those tragic things where you do see the best of humanity and community come together in the face of such adversity.
Absolutely. All right, man. So we got you working for Genac, and you're living in Raleigh. And I guess I'd like you to tell us about. You told us how you got started with F3 and stuff like that, but I know that you lead the GTEs at one point.
Yeah. After Gus, I forget. I don't even remember what year it was. Honestly, it was. I guess it was around 2022, probably. I can't remember. I'd done a couple of GTEs. I'd started to get to know the senior leadership team to some degree with Helmet and Dread through those events. And then I don't exactly remember how it all came together. I think I was starting to help out with more like local. I've never been in like a Nantan or anything here locally, but I've held positions on the SLT here for Carpex. Connectivity to some of those guys came through Hello Kitty when he was leading comms for the nation. Started talking about ways to better optimize the events to be more basically with my program management or project management background. Like how do we structure what is an amazing thing and an impactful thing, but try to grow and scale that. And get more organization behind the ability to like strategically think through scheduling and liability and websites and marketing and how do you ship sandbags and water bladders and other gear all over the U.S. between events and who holds that. And then it was like, we want to expand the cadre to more than to F3 brothers who want to push themselves into those types of leadership positions and learn and all of that. So there was really a growth mode mindset around the program and how do we keep giving this magical thing that is a GTE away? How do we bring it to every corner or try to bring it towards every corner of the F3 map so that if you can't host one, is there one relatively close by that you can clown car to, or how can we get creative in the schedule to where, maybe we don't schedule a GTE in Naperville in February, right? Like just because they want one.
Right.
So there was a lot of things in that, and I was looking to get more involved. I was looking to sort of level up my impact on the organization, my awareness, my leadership, all those kind of things. Excuse me. And so we did. I put together my own little SLT around leading the GTEs and growing the GTEs. Shortstop out of Kinston. I don't know if you've ever heard of or met Shortstop.
No.
He was basically the brains behind the operation in terms of getting the budgeting right, because we have this notion of, right, open to all men. A GTE should be available to every man if they want to pursue it, if they want to endeavor to do it. Cost shouldn't be a barrier to entry, but these things cost money. It's expensive to pull it off. Insurance policies, but you got to pay cadre. You've got travel. You've got event space. You've got all these things that end up costing money, and it was needing to get sort of a more balanced approach in how do we keep costs low for PAX registrations. How do we grow interest to maximize the impact of a GTE as it does on a region who host one, not just the men who attend and maybe take it back to their region, but how we've seen over and over again how it lights a fire in a region who might be in their own growth spurt or they're in a rut or what have you. And so it was a lot of meetings, a lot of late nights, a lot of Zooms, a lot of a lot of working through logistical challenges to try to just not necessarily take Grow Ruck or GTEs to the stratosphere, but just instead of being built on some shaky sand or some wobbly pylons, like let's lay a foundation so that the next generation of GTE leaders in an SLT can come in and then send it to the moon. And so I think we did that pretty well. I was in growth mode with a tech startup at the same time as well, so my attention wasn't as good as it could have been or should have been. But again, it was more of like, I'm trying to do this in my spare time, trying to do this at night. And I've got 3 kids under the age of 10 or 9 at the time, a busy career, traveling way too much for work, a wife, Concentrica, like all those things. So I think when I was like, sort of like, we need to do this and that, and other competing opinions were like, no, we should probably do this and that, it was like a good time for me to just like, you know what? I think I got out of this what I needed. I think we pushed the program in a very much needed course of action, and let the next folks take it over. And so then I guess that's been about, year and a half to 2 years ago. And then we've seen the evolution through the schedule of GTEs and now into the Freedom Ops schedule for next year, which Carpex is hosting one in October. So you guys should go do BRR and then roll right into a GTE down here in Carpex in October next year. Have you guys done a GTE?
Taking a year for my shoulder to get back to normal from from Cape Fear's GTE.
That was a year ago. Yeah, it was a year ago.
Yeah.
Oh, so Shut-In was at that one. So was Parker. So was Dewey Decimal. So was,
I remember Dewey Decimal. I know that name.
So was Clockwork, I think, did that one. Maybe Triple Lindy. I'm trying to remember. We had a
that's
pretty
a great
decent
name. Triple Lindy.
Triple Lindy. He's a good hombre. He's a real good dude.
Not as good as Wonder Pickle, but it's a good name.
Yeah, that's great. Every now and then on the COT, we'll ask the nation to send us a new recording of their COT. Because the names are just always the best. I'm always so entertained by the names because we know no bounds. There's an endless supply of names. It's just the best.
Yeah, I know. I love that. And you kind of memorize it. After listening to a few COT podcasts, it's like I could say it with them. That's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Speaking of the COT podcast, how'd you get involved with that?
Funny story. That might have been some of the catalyst of getting sort of my profile, I guess, elevated a little bit into the world. Kitty is the mouth of the South, the podcaster, the broadcaster. I mean, I don't know if you guys know his background too, right? It's like, I guess he talked about it. I didn't watch his episode. I should, but I know him too well. I don't know if you guys know that I've known Kitty since 2002. We were fraternity brothers at App.
No.
Oh, you were?
That's how originally met.
Man, there's got to be some really, really good stories there.
I glossed over those 6 years in Boone for a few reasons, but
we got to dig.
It wasn't nothing. It wasn't anything too crazy. I still got a security clearance.
We should have both of you on the podcast together sometime and just go back.
We wouldn't get a word in.
Stories.
You guys wouldn't. I wouldn't get a word in. No, we had some wonderful times. We had some great times together. He's a little bit older than me, so I hung out and partied more with Ralph, who is
he's the Make America Burpee Again guy, right?
Yeah.
Right?
No, or is it a different Ralph?
That's a different Ralph. Ralph is his hospital name. Atari in Puget Sound is
that's Kitty's brother.
Is Kitty's middle brother, and then Lightyear Adam is Kitty's youngest brother, and then obviously Red Baron is the nation's general's Kitty's those boys' dad. But Atari and I hung out quite a bit through years in Boone before Atari actually graduated early to go to Beijing because General Jodas at the time was the defense attaché for the anyway. But it was great. A lot of good stories. Yeah, well, you do like a cutting room floor, couple of whiskeys and see where the conversation goes with Kitty sometime. But we need to have a F3 podcast host in person. I don't know what you want to call it.
retreat or something like that. I can't even get you guys on a Zoom call together. So,
No,
I don't know how
like
I would pull this off, but
some kind of like podcasters of the round table or something like that.
Right. Yeah. We'd have to go down there, obviously, because you guys are all from down there, so that'd be all right with me.
It would be good to ask Kitty how he got to the point of like, I'm going to do a show for the nation, because I don't necessarily remember the genesis there, other than as the nation continued to grow and we started seeing the impactfulness of stories coming out either just through Twitter or Facebook or by email about what was going on in each of the different nations and regions around the world. It was like, hey, we should know about this. More guys should know about this, and really sort of try to, looking back on it, it sort of obviously set the tone for like the stuff worth trying guys to really drill down on initiatives and other things that's working well, for you guys to really get a hold of some really, accelerating men who are having incredible positive impact and change on themselves, on their relationships. I mean, you guys know it better than me. So Brian in an idea or Kitty in an idea of what that podcast could be, he asked me to be like, will you come on and be the first guest? And his plan was to like just have a different co-host. I believe this is right. His plan was to have a different co-host every episode. Like, he's the anchor, right? He's running the show. He's pulling in things from all over the nation, but bring in a guy, talk about their F3 story, etc. And we recorded the first like 2 or 3 episodes literally in his garage in the dark with like lapel mics and this little mixer board. And I was drinking a coffee, and it's a lawn. I got my feet on a lawnmower. I'm sitting in a camping chair, and him and I, as you guys know, we just sort of riff off of one another. We have lots of easy conversations in terms of like how we can go back and forth on a topic that we don't even plan to talk about, or like how we want to drill down on something that's specific to, our season of life, or talking about things we experienced that, we likely know that guys across the F3 world are going through something similar, or have good perspective, or send us the stories, send us your triumphs and your philanthropies. Like, we want to know those things. We want to spread the good news. We want to, be a megaphone for what regions we're doing. And that rapport between him and I just sort of, I think, resonated with quite a few people, and was like, y'all should just do this together permanently. Bring on other people at times if you want, and a phone call or a Zoom. But like, so that was, I'm pretty sure that was January of 2020. I'd have to go back and look and see what the first episode was. But literally, we did those first few episodes, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And so we live 7 minutes from one another here in Cary. He's actually technically an Apex resident, and they share a border. And we just started recording. I'm up here in the bonus room. He's in his house or his office. Like, everybody's quarantined. It wasn't whatever. So it's been a very interesting journey that we had visions of like building a studio in his backyard, or like putting foam boards in the garage, or like retrofitting it out, and it never materialized. But his skill in storytelling, in marketing, digital media, all the things that he does for both his Mammon and his side hustle, but his D2X, like what he's really dialed in on with Pick Up the Six Productions and launching his own podcast stream, website, and all these guests that he's had, really amazing guests telling really incredible stories and of service and impact and selflessness. It's just sort of materialized, and we've, as you guys have seen, we were incredibly regular on recording, like once a week, all the time, year round. I think I've only missed like maybe 4 or 5 shows up until like more recently, where my season of life with my kids and my work schedule and his work schedule and his kids, like we're still trying to do it once a week. It's getting harder and harder to do that. But it's a respite for me. I've loved it. I've loved doing the Quote Worth Repeato. It's been a way for me to connect with packs all over the place, sending me stuff or sending things out that I find interesting. And then people send me a DM back, and it's like, man, I shared that at COT, or we talked about it in small group or Shield Lock or whatever. Which we haven't even talked about Shield Lock yet, but yeah, that's just sort of, it started in his garage, and here we are 5 years later almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if he probably mentioned how it started when we interviewed him on our podcast. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I'm thinking it piggybacked off C-SPAN's Roundtable podcast. And
that sounds right. Yeah. Cause
I think that's sort of what happened, but I don't remember for sure. But
because
but
that
I'm
was
glad
more
you guys do it.
long form interview focused, and we were trying to be sort of quick hitting information, sharing the news of the nation. Yeah, that now it's all coming back to me. Yeah.
And and I just talked to Kitty yesterday, and he said, I mean, I get it. We everybody's Dial Up and I are in a different season of life than all you guys. COT podcast stuff we're trying for wellness. Our kids are older, and we don't. I mean, Dial Up still has some things he does, but that's on the weekend usually. So
can definitely relate though to your schedules.
yeah, totally get it. Yeah. And I'm not going to share everything with the nation at the moment because I'm still trying. I've decided that instead of trying to get all you guys together for one meeting, I'm going to just contact you guys individually and see how you're doing and get ideas. It's better, for the brain trust to be together and bounce ideas off each other. But that's okay. If we can't do that, we can't do that. But
it's far less entertaining than the text strings. Though,
my gosh. Yeah. So
truth be told, if you start doing the one-offs, I'll throw you on my calendar during the day at any point, and it looks like a real meeting, which it is. But like, hit me up in between the daytime hours. I can be much more probably.
No, I could do that because there's weeks where I'm off for a few days or I'm work evenings and I'm free in the morning. That's fine. Okay. I just want to check in with you guys. I don't want anybody to feel left out. We got two guys doing the stuff we're trying. Two guys doing a C2 podcast. I didn't want anybody to think that I was not interested in their opinion and talking to them. But anyway, for the nation out there, we are trying to always kind of evaluate ourselves and see how we're doing as podcasts. Kitty said that maybe you guys are going to go to every other week, which I think is just fine. Whatever you can do. Also, the thing that I've been encouraging, I haven't talked to Bones or Tommy Boy or Italian Job yet about this, but thinking about, maybe it's time I'm maybe a year from now I should step aside or whatever. Who do we get to fill your shoes? Should we do that? Is there a way to mentor the next guy or recruit somebody somehow? It's kind of difficult, but anyway, there are things that we're kind of thinking about, stuff like that, because we want to offer these things to the nation. And as I told Kitty, I think of all the podcasts that we do in F3 Family Podcast, the COT is probably the most important. I hate to say important, but the news of the nation, and as you guys say, connecting the nation. I think that's probably, if I were to pick one, that's the one we should make sure stays alive somehow.
Sure.
I love what we do. We love doing it. We did it for 2 years before we joined the F3 Family Podcast ourselves, and so it's just a blessing for us to do it. Hunt for Wellness. I still got to get a hold of Bones. We're trying to connect and stuff like that. But anyway, that's the stuff that's going on. And one other thing, I can't divulge anything yet until I'm given permission.
Uh-oh.
But there's another podcast we're working on getting out there, and if and when it happens, I think everyone's going to really like that. And and honestly, I think that's would be the next one that I would say we really need. So anyway. Cool. Stay tuned. Sorry, teaser for the nation out there on that.
No, I totally sympathize, agree with what you're saying. Right, if we are leaders developing other leaders and giving this thing away, right? How do we transition some of these more core ideas or these core functions of the nation? Similarly, it's like I'm a site queue here at a site that's literally 30 seconds in my car or my truck in the mornings on Tuesday, and as a second, me and Skipper, who's part of my Shield Lock, we were the second site queues at this site, and we've been site queues there for way too long. It's just so easy for me to manage the site. It's one of the true joys of the Gloom for me every week, based on our regulars who are there. We're a low impact, what do we say? Limited run, maximum suck. Beatdown is sort of our moniker. Is called Claymore because the neighborhood I live in is called Scottish Hills, so it's F3 Claymore. But we call ourselves the Claymorons. Like, we have a lot of fun with this workout, and so I don't really want to give it up. But it's like, if you're not positioning a new guy to step into a leadership role. And typically, I don't know how it is for your region, but I think this is pretty ubiquitous across F3 Nation. You get into F3, you start doing more than just posting. Maybe you're helping out with a third F event or a second F thing, and then you're showing up regularly somewhere. You're present. You're accountable. All those things. I feel like a site queue is pretty much that next sort of quote unquote official step, at least in our region. That's typically how it's been, I think, in a lot of ways. And then folks who are site queues and dependable and relied upon, et cetera, maybe they start another AO somewhere, or they start moving on to SLT in some form or fashion.
Yep.
It tends to be the trajectory of some. So saying all that, it's like I shouldn't continue to occupy a site queue
entry level position.
But it's so good because it's we started during COVID. We started we really ramped up like tailgate cafeteria in the parking lot, PLC, parking lot coffee, when people weren't going, coffee shops weren't open or people couldn't go, and we were sitting in camping chairs until 9:30 in the morning because no one knew what work was. No one was going to the office. There wasn't any accountability. You really started developing some cool core relationships, blades and stones and shield locks getting formed and people starting to do life together as families. Like it's been a cool thing to be a part of. But yeah, giving away podcast seat, giving away a leadership position, passing on a site queue, like all of those things is something I need to really dive into in 25 to be sure.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, we're fulfilling the mission, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Helping guys be leaders. All right. Well, Dial, do you have any other questions before I ask them?
Yeah. I have one question. So in your background, so our audio listeners aren't going to see this. We got the App State helmet. We got the App State flag. We got the Carolina Panthers. What in the heck is up with the White Sox Frank Thomas banner?
Yeah.
Griffey.
Well, and two, that
I mean,
that
Griffey
flag,
you could take. Griffey's, but
the
Frank
flag
Thomas
you
and the White
see-
Sox?
the flag you see behind me was also made by an F3 Pax who's in green level here locally on the other side of Cary. Bronx Bomber. He makes these badass
Very cool.
stained flags. It's wood.
Yeah.
It's all wood. So I mentioned earlier in the show, like baseball obsessed kid for a while. That was everything. And I also mentioned growing up and spending lots of time with my grandparents. And growing up in Asheville, like the Braves are my team. They were the only team like locally, quote unquote, to North Carolina. And you could count on seeing every single game because it was always on TBS. And grew up watching the Braves with my grandmother, even coincidentally more so than my grandfather. Like she knew every single player, could ring out stats. Like she was awesome. This was like the years of, like Avery, Glavin, Maddox, Sid Bream, Terry Pendleton, Otis Nixon, Mark Lemke, Raphael Belliard, like Fred McGriff, the crime dog, like that 90s era Braves.
I just
doing nothing but winning pennants and not World Series.
I just watched the replay. I remember it like yesterday, sitting in my dorm and freaking Sid Bream rounding third.
Just chugging, pumping that
With a piano on his back.
Hit and knocked the Pirates out of the. I'm a Phillies fan, but like you cheer for the Pennsylvania.
So we hate the Braves.
You cheer for the Pennsylvania team, but still, like you're cheering for the Pirates, man. Yeah. And oh my goodness, that play! And we had one annoying roommate that was a Braves fan, and
That's
everyone
hilarious.
just wanted to pummel him because he was
That's
just
great.
trash talking the whole night.
So it was always Braves first and foremost, but then Ken Griffey is up there, who I'll go to my grave saying is the best swing in the history of the game. Like it doesn't get any more smooth and pure than Ken Griffey Jr. And I like him as a man. I like him as a person. I thought it was incredible watching as a kid. He's in the bigs, actually playing in games with his dad, like just kind of stuff
cool
like that blew my mind as a 10, 11-year-old kid obsessed with baseball. And then the Frank Thomas that's above him, Thomas was my American League guy. So I was a Braves fan through and through, but when it came to the American League, it was Thomas, because not only could you watch every single Braves game on TBS in the South, you also got Comscope and WGN, so you could watch all the Cubs and all the White Sox if you wanted to. So those types of networks, and the Bulls, exactly.
Yeah.
Watching Jordan, all my childhood as well. I was a Hornets fan, but obviously love Jordan. So my dad found those pennants somewhere in his work travels. They're like caricature pennants. Who knows what year they were from? I probably could look them up. But working from home through COVID and now in this role where I'm fully remote, I like these things in the background because they are an unbelievable conversation starter.
Yeah.
For people that you get on a Zoom call with or a Teams, and you may have talked to them on the phone or emailed with them. They've never seen you in person, or it's somebody that's like brand new cold. You've never connected with this person at all. But there are things in your background, like the books on your shelf behind you, or even that image behind you, dial up about like that road to the mountains. Like, it's a conversation starter. And the amount of people that are like, Griffey and White and like Frank, let's talk about that. Or it's like it pulls walls down. It opens up conversation avenues. It does a lot, and I think you should have a personal touch back there behind you if that's what you're going to be sitting in front of all day. So it's representative of a lot of things, but that's how you get to why is Frank Thomas on the wall above your head.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah, and now he's hawking testosterone boosters. Him and Doug Flutie.
Him and Doug Flutie, right? Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I got two questions for you that we ask everybody. So the first one is, if you were to pick somebody, it could be somebody from the distant past or somebody you know now or whatever that you'd say was your inspiration, your hero, somebody you looked up to, who would that be?
Yeah, that's my grandfather that I mentioned earlier.
I suspect that you would pick.
Yeah. He passed, I guess I was I in grad? No, I was married. Yeah, he passed not long after Lindsay and I got married. Was in our wedding, stole the show at our wedding pretty amazingly with a speech he gave, or like he read a poem that he wrote on a card during the ceremony, and like everybody's crying. I'm crying. Everybody's crying. But he's a true inspiration. Like I was mentioning before, like from just like physical teaching and learning of things like skills, hard skills to soft skills to, interaction. Like grew up, my name's Jamie. My first name is Jamie. His father's name was Jamie. Jamie, who I'm named after, was a horseback Presbyterian minister and justice of the peace in Spruce Pine in Mitchell County. So maybe that's where my like law enforcement like brain goes way back to.
Yeah.
But he's very proud man, proud of the family, proud of the history of the family, of what he had made of himself in his life, was proud of his service in the Army Air Corps, as it was called before, the Army and the Air Force split, right? And ran some successful businesses and then retired, and then was always doing something, like never sitting still until he got really old, but was doing Meals on Wheels delivery, was manning a garden, was the man traded and sold and traded more used cars than you could imagine for someone that didn't own a used car lot. Like he would go bananas over something like Bring a Trailer website these days.
Really?
Because like he had stacks of Auto Trader or Boat Trader, the old paper magazines you could get at the gas station, all that kind of stuff. But he was great. I used to, before we moved to the mountains, I would go spend 2 or 3 weeks of the summer with him up there. And what's really interesting that will resonate with you guys and in the audience is I can have distinct memories of summertime in Asheville, waking up entirely too early for what a 10 or 11-year-old should be waking up. And Papaw, as we call him, Papaw throwing me into the truck and going down to the McDonald's. Every morning I was there. And he's sitting there drinking black coffee with like 15 other dudes or 6 other dudes, all that age, all that World War II era age, all the Greatest Generation. And they're in there doing what we do, in a COT or what we do in a cafeteria.
Yep.
They're talking about their wives, or they're talking about the weather, or they're talking about jobs, or they're talking about politics, or they're talking about struggles, right? And it's really quite interesting to see things come full circle when I think back to those memories of those men leaning on each other in a McDonald's or a Hardee's, drinking black coffee and eating sausage biscuits at 6:15 in the morning when they could have been doing anything else or being anywhere else, but there was value to them circled up in the corner booths of that McDonald's down on Patton Avenue in Asheville.
Yeah.
And so it's just really cool. He was always a big influence, always a motivator. I would love to, people ask the question, like, if you could have dinner with somebody now at Liver or not. He's always on the list for me because I would love to be able to talk to him about all the things that have happened in my life with my wife and my kids and profession and the world and all that. One last conversation would be really cool. Yeah. It's him.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Shout out to Papa.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
He's great.
All right. Last question. This is your chance to speak to the men of America. What's your message for the men of America?
Oh, goodness. The men of America, I think, I like the old adage of pray not for a lighter load, but a stronger back.
Is that a quote worth Rapido?
I don't know if I've ever actually used it in an official capacity. I've had more than, it's really a bummer. Like, I should have put all of these in a spreadsheet. I should have done that since the very beginning. I had a book at one time I was using, and then I started pulling things, and I'd love to have like everyone from every episode, because to my knowledge, in my haphazard approach, I've never repeatoed myself. I've never repeatoed a quote. But I don't think I use that one as an official one. But I think of that in the context of men, particularly now in 2024, and even before sort of the state of the world that we find ourselves in. Men have a mountain of responsibility and things getting thrown at them all the time. And we've seen how that can be detrimental and beyond repair to some who are alone or some who are struggling and not talking about it and what happens thereafter. But I think that the mission of F3 goes so far beyond what the words on the screen are, to be able to be that man for yourself first and foremost, and then for the concentrica from that point forward. Because external factors that are going to affect your internal factors are not going to go away. They're not going to likely get easier. They're always going to be there. If you try to take a stoic approach and it's not what's happening to you, it's how you're reacting to it. Easier said than done for a lot of men, for a lot of reasons, for a lot of circumstances. But I think if we can continue to sharpen ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally by leaning on each other in either a shield lock, in the gloom, under the log, on the BRR, at that corner booth in McDonald's, drinking black coffee, whatever it takes to continue to get your feet on the carpet each morning and moving forward, I think that's the core thing. Like, I think stagnation breeds complacency, both mentally and physically, obviously. And I think that's one of our biggest detrimental things. Like, if you've read Comfort Crisis, if you've, familiar with that type of stuff, it's really interesting how we find ourselves in these types of challenges. And I don't know that they're wholly different than the things that, my grandfather was holding court about in McDonald's in 1992.
Right.
It's different because of the life we live today and the exposure we have to everything and the instant gratification of everything, and everything's on display. And there's just a big piece that it's not going to get any easier. It's not going to, the storm brewing is probably not going to really lessen, but how much stronger can you be in the moments of really tumultuous times? And I think F3 for me personally has allowed me to push through some really crazy times. And it also makes me recognize still how far I have to go to continue to try to be a more ever-present husband, a more calm and patient and understanding father of 2 daughters and a son. There's just this continuous evolution, right? You solve one problem and 3 more pop up, the whack-a-mole thing. And so how are you positioning yourself day to day with those around you to be able to tackle those things? I think the load's not going to get lighter. So how can you keep it accelerating yourself to rise to those challenges and occasions around you, and really realizing that your children and your wife are dependent on it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So
good word, man. That's it's an ongoing process. We got to keep getting better. We got to get right and live right before we can lead right. But don't do it alone.
Right.
And human nature hasn't changed. Men still need men. Guys still need guys. So
for sure.
Good word, man. Good word. All right. Yeah. Hey, man, I really appreciate you giving us your time. It's pushing my bedtime now. I'm old, and I got to go to bed here. You guys keep me up late.
I'm staring at a screen with.
I don't have to work tomorrow.
Emails are populating as we've been talking.
No. Oh man! All right.
I'm not gonna touch it. That's a tomorrow problem.
There you go.
A tomorrow problem.
There you go. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being on, man. And you know what, Dial Up? I think we just spoke to another high impact.
Absolutely, man. Great to finally have you on and give you a chance to share your story. A lot of the guys.
I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate the platform. Love what you guys are doing. Excuse me. Appreciate both of y'all pushing through and finding time in my schedule to be a part of this. But the grind you guys are keeping on, it's just you're impacting lives, right? And men are impacting lives, and you're sharing their word just like we try to do on COT. You guys are doing it here, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for what you do. Appreciate your leadership.
Yeah, it's a blessing to us. That's for sure. All right, man. Go take care of that family of yours.
Take care, Rapido.
All right, we're going to do it.
All right, God bless you, man.
Love y'all.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I would like to thank our guests for joining us and sharing their story of becoming a high-impact man. More information and resources can be found at highimpactman.com. If you like this podcast, please consider following us on our social media pages or email us at him@highimpactman.com. That is HIM@highimpactman.com. The High Impact Man podcast has a new episode every week, and you can find them on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast platforms. Have a great week, everyone.